Hey, I'm Dr. Dave, Microdose U, and welcome back. This is actually the second episode with Dr. Denise Moret, where she's going to be speaking to the women out there about microdosing magic mushrooms, psilocybin for women's health. And our first episode has gotten some really great response. We got some good questions in, and she's going to be answering these questions about, again, microdosing and women's health. Before I go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Denise, I just want to let you know that anything Dr. Denise talks about as far as links or how we can help you further, it's available in the show notes here and also on the website microdoseu.com. So women, hope you're really enjoying this series. This is number 2. If you men, if you're watching this, if you know of a woman in your life that could use this information, please feel free to refer her to us. And having said that, take it away, Dr. Denise.
Hi, it's Dr. Denise with Microdose U, and I'm back just about a week and a half, I guess, ago. Dr. Dave and I had put out an episode on psychedelic psilocybin, LSD, and issues around women's health, such as perimenopause, menopause. And I'm coming back on here. We were going to record the next, it's probably going to be a series. And yet before I did that, we got some very great specific questions that I wanted to come on and answer. So keep the questions coming. I'm going to just go ahead and go through these kind of quickly. And I will say, if you didn't get a chance to watch that episode on women's health, that was, like I said, about a week and a half ago, you might want to go back. It's only about 10 or 11 minutes and take a look at that. Because some of the questions are answered, but there were some terrific questions that came as a result. And we always love when you reach out. I love to get the questions so that we can really be helpful directly and specifically to you. So I'm going to go through the questions and give you some general answers here. So Emily writes, I'm in my late 40s and perimenopause has completely thrown off my mood and sleep. Very common, Emily. That's the norm, not the exception. How can someone tell whether their symptoms are hormonal or something psilocybin might help with? Great question. And I would say it's not a or, it's an and. It is definitely hormonal, and we know that psilocybin, and as well as other psychedelics, LSD, can be extremely helpful. As I said in the video last week, that psilocybin psychedelics will kind of stabilize and regulate and do the job that the changes in the hormones, the drop in the estrogen and the progesterone, which affects our serotonin, our mood, fogginess, all of these brain fog, all of these symptoms that we experience, it kind of regulates that. It kind of comes in as a substitute because the body is looking for other ways to regulate itself. So psilocybin absolutely helps with that. It is extremely likely that what you're describing is hormonal and that psychedelics can have that stabilizing, regulating effect. So thank you for that question, Emily. Next, we have a question from Mindful Maria. Love that. And her question is there a safe way for women to microdose during perimenopause if they're already taking hormone replacement therapy, which is HRT, it's abbreviated? This is when, physician will recommend taking some sort of hormone replacement, synthetic hormones, whether it's a transdermal patch or a cream, or sometimes it's an oral medication. The question is, how is that as far as combining psilocybin, LSD, psychedelics, along with hormonal replacement therapy? And, she says, I'm nervous about mixing things, which is absolutely, first of all, the answer is it's absolutely safe and okay, but it is always good to cautiously, ask us, get some opinions, get some, ask your medical doctor if you feel you can be open about that. Look at the research and see, are there contraindications? Part of the issue is that we often don't have extensive research, and sometimes the research is kind of not the best. we do have a lot of what we call field data, which is, observations, experiences people that have been collected that give us a lot of that information. So it's women living in the world that are taking hormone replacement therapy and safely using psilocybin. So in general, and I always say, Dr. Dave and I always say, don't, this is not medical advice. Always check with your doctor. And yet we do have some answers and there's some trends. So generally, it is extremely safe to microdose psilocybin, psychedelics, LSD, while also taking hormone replacement therapy. I will say that many women will end up shifting away from the hormone replacement therapy because, as I've already said, the psilocybin psychedelics will kind of stabilize and take over. But it's not necessary. You can definitely take those together. The research has not shown any interactions, no cautions whatsoever. It is always good, like I said, to kind of check with the research, and your doctors check with us. And the reason that there does not seem to be an interaction is psychedelics work on a very different pathway than the hormone replacement therapies are working. Sometimes we can have sensitivities to things based on when we're dosing, what days, and the hormones, and whether it's a transdermal and oral, that can make somewhat of a difference, not in terms of an interaction, but we may have certain sensitivities with cyclical changes. But again, it's safe and there should not be an issue. And yet you might want to, discuss it with us a little more closely to get specifics, because even though we see trends, there's definitely individual differences. Okay, moving along. Lee or Leah, I never know with that name, because I know Lees and Leahs and they spell it the same way. Her question: I feel my anxiety spikes more around my cycle. So this would be a menstrual cycle. Does psilocybin, so not perimenopause necessarily, although certainly menstrual cycles continue into menopause. So, both of these factors will kind of come into play. It gets a little tricky, but I'm going to answer the question from the menstrual cycle. So somebody that's not really dealing so much with perimenopause and menopause. We can definitely tweak and fine tune that if somebody's dealing with both. So again, the question: I feel like my anxiety spikes more around my cycle. Does psilocybin work differently depending on where a woman is and her hormonal fluctuations? Absolutely. There's definitely a noticeable effect. And in fact, I had just written up a little chart about for a menstrual cycle, not perimenopause, menopause, or postmenopause, a menstruating woman, that there are trends within the cycle. There's definitely fluctuations. It's going to sound a little different than what I've said about the stabilizing effect of perimenopause and menopause, particularly in the video that I that we released last week. So it's going to sound a little different because things are different in a menstrual cycle. So I'm just going to quickly go through this briefly, and reach out if you want more clarification. So we're going to count the menstrual cycle. Day 1 to day 5 is the menstrual beginning part of the cycle. And this is when estrogen and progesterone are lower. And those are the days, this is where it might sound opposite. Those are kind of the days in general that I often recommend people do a lower microdose than they typically do, or that be their off days. It's a good time to kind of just lower things a little bit. So that would be days 1 through 5. That's the menstrual part of the cycle. The next, days 6 through 13, which are called the follicular, you have a rise in estrogen, and that there's more energy. There's more, sometimes women feel that's their best creative focus. This can be actually the ideal time to take your normal highest microdose. So if you're microdosing 100, 150, that's and that's your ideal dose. Those days 6 through 13 are going to be the ideal time to do that dose. Then days 14 through 16 are the ovulation. That's peak estrogen, high fertility. And that is a time when microdosing also fine. And it can just help us with, our energy at that time and our kind of collaborative confidence, all that social sort of interaction. The last part, and this is, specific to, Leah's question, the last phase, which is days 17 through 28, that is when progesterone rises. The mood may fluctuate and feel, women will call that like PMS symptoms at that particular time. They feel a little more emotionally sensitive. This is the time where a microdose could be best to be reduced just a little. Again, if you were, for example, doing 150, maybe you go down to 100, or you take, you dose and you skip a couple days or something like that. The slightly lower dose, which again is going to sound opposite than perimenopause because it is, but that slightly lower dose is going to help regulate and stabilize and decrease some of the PMS symptoms, actually. So it sounds reverse that you would actually go lower when you're having more PMS symptoms, but that's going to work better with the hormones. I know, a little confusing. Okay. Fourth question is from Serenity Jess. Love that too. Are there specific emotional patterns that we see, or that you see, I should say, in perimenopause? She's speaking to us. That you see in perimenopause that respond especially well to psilocybin, things like the irritability, sadness, overwhelm, feeling disconnected. Absolutely yes. Absolutely yes, Jess, because the irregularity, the inconsistency in perimenopause, remember, it can be very extreme. Things are really just sort of a lot of irregularity and a lot of fluctuations and shifts that are just can be very extreme. So the psychedelics will provide that stabilizing effect, as you've heard me say. Again, because the serotonin, which is going to, during, always the serotonin and the estrogen connection is a very strong connection. So as estrogen and the progesterone, those hormonal levels drop, it's going to affect the serotonin, which is definitely going to affect the very things like irritability, sadness, overwhelm, feeling disconnected. The psychedelics target serotonin, so that's why it has that stabilizing effect. And we do see a decrease in the irritability, more of a calm, sort of leveling, grounded sense, so that the overwhelm is less, the anxiety is less, and there's a little bit of an emotional regulation, so there isn't the sort of fluctuation. And so it really does, it is extremely helpful. Again, go back and, if you want, watch that first video from last week. Okay, moving along. I think this is the last question. Karen, for women who want to try microdosing, but are dealing with brain fog, low energy, hot flashes, what's the gentlest, safest way to start? Actually, I do have one more question. It's not the last, it's the fifth question. This is a great question. We get this question a lot. Somebody who doesn't know, how do I start? These are my goals. I would say always it's great to go on, Microdose U. There's, through the social media, Facebook, microdoseu.com website. There's free guides. There's the beginner's guide. There's all kinds of free, like the 5 weeks of starting. And then there's the several beginner's guides to microdosing. And Dr. Dave does a new one pretty much every year. So you can go back through them, search the show notes, search the shows, and look for the most recent beginner's guide, which, like I said, every year he releases another one, or reach out to us. And certainly if you're not on the Patreon channel, you join for a small fee. There's the Patreon, and then you'll be in that group and WhatsApp, and we have live meetings, and you can certainly get a lot of your questions answered. All right. And I said there was one more question, but actually there were two. So the last question, I promise it's the last one, is from Memphis Mom. I've been microdosing on my own for a few months, but I feel like I'm guessing with everything. Very common. I'm not sure if my dose is right or if I'm processing things in a healthy way. Do you and Dr. Dave ever work with people privately to guide them through this one-on-one, especially for women dealing with perimenopause, anxiety, and emotional swings? Absolutely, very common. And we as I've said, certainly join Patreon, reach out to us, go on Microdose U. If you're looking to work one-on-one specifically to answer this question, I appreciate that. We do work directly with you, and I will work directly with you. Go on the microdoseu.com website, click on coaching. There's a drop-down menu, click on coaching. That should be a button to, click on to fill out a form. It's very brief. Reach out to us if something doesn't make sense. Just email Dr. Dave, get in touch with us. We actually do really love to help people one-on-one. And the benefit of the one-on-one is that, because even though there are trends, particularly with these psychedelic medicines, there's going to be a lot of factors that may be slightly different than the trends that we see. And then if you throw in all the factors and the fluctuations of perimenopause, menopause, things settle down a little bit, post-menopause, but still there's so many different changes. We really can dial that in. So you can do a consultation, you can do a package of consultations. We have a program. We really will also tailor it to meet you specifically. So great questions. Keep them coming. We will continue to do more in the series on women's health, not just perimenopause, but other issues as well. Reach out to us anytime, and we are always here for you. So thanks very much, and thanks, Dr. Dave, for having me on here, and thank you all on Microdose U for sending in the questions. Appreciate it very much.